There were real alligators on set for Linda Kozlowski's 1986 movie. Guards with guns stood in the trees. For Crocodile Dundee, she slept in old uranium mine huts that had been abandoned. The movie made her well known. It also made her a bad housewife. Her co-star left his wife and 5 kids to be with her. Australia didn't like her. Every day people told her they would kill her. But then the worst part came. She found something that changed everything after 23 years of marriage. She is now a Muslim, lives in Morocco and gives tours to rich people. Why? You'll be shocked by the real reason. The 7th of January 1958 saw the birth of Linda Kozlowski in Fairfield, Connecticut. People in her family had left Poland after the war and come to the United States to find better things. They used to be called Helena and Stanislaw, but to fit in they changed their names to Helen and Stanley. They didn't have much, but they worked hard to make things better for their daughter. For them, America meant being safe and having chances. It became the place where Linda sought and found fame. That was her last year at Andrew Ward High School. People knew she was good even back then. She led the school plays, not just played parts. She knew not only her lines by heart, but also the whole book sometimes. She helped other people out when things went wrong. People in our town talked about her act as Emily. Some people said she made them cry. That doesn't happen very often at high school shows. But Linda was already unique, and everyone who saw her act knew it. That wasn't all she did. Not many people get into the Juilliard School in New York City, but she did. Less than 12% of them make it. There is a lot of attention among kids. She did 2 things: she acted, and she sang opera. That wasn't like that. There were a lot of busy days and long hours, and there wasn't much sleep. She kept going though it all. Her teachers noted how quickly she could go from giving a dramatic speech to singing an Italian aria. People could tell she was working on something bigger, even though she was serious and focused. By 1981, she was only 23 years old and already taking the stage professionally. The show she was cast in is called How It All Began. Immigration and identity were big ideas in the play, and they hit home for her in a deep way. More than 200 women had auditioned, but Linda got the part. Critics took note. She was called a surprise by some. It wasn't just a nice thing said. People who hire actors will remember that review. She thought this was more than just a good show. It was the beginning of everything. The next movie was Death of a Salesman. It was 1984, and she got a small part in a big show. There were a lot of famous people in the play, which was a Broadway production of an Arthur Miller favorite. Linda was the part of Miss Forsyth. Even though it wasn't the lead part, she stood out. Her scene stood out. She gave the character new life, which the New York Times said was great. Not only did that act make people respect her in the theater, it also made people notice her in Hollywood. Soon after, a new chance came calling. In 1985, actors were being sought for a strange Australian film. The name of it was Crocodile Dundee. It was a simple idea. For a wild date, put a tough Aussie man with a smart, interested American woman. They didn't want a big star. They were looking for someone new. Linda tried out. She had worked on TV and in the theater, but she wasn't well known. A huge number of other women also wanted the part. But something clicked when she read lines next to Paul Hogan. They didn't have a strong bond. It made sense. She got the part. It came with a $500K deal for 3 movies. That was a huge deal for someone who hasn't used a screen much. She didn't just take the money and show up though. She got ready, she learned some Aussie slang. She learned about the society. She didn't want Sue Charlton to feel fake. She wanted her to feel like a real person. Everything worked when they started shooting. Fun, love and charm, it all worked well together. Making Crocodile Dundee was just as crazy as the movie itself. A scene of a river attack in Australia's Northern Territory was one of the most violent parts. At least on film, Linda Kozlowski, who played Sue Charlton, was almost dragged into the water by a huge crocodile. But there was more going on behind the scenes than just acting. For close-up shots, the crew used a fake crocodile, but real crocodiles were swimming nearby the whole time. Someone with a gun was in a tree, ready to use it if a real crocodile came too close. Kakadu National Park is where the movie was shot. There were no hotels or trailers, so it didn't look like a movie set at all. The actors and team slept in old huts that uranium workers had left behind. It felt like a risk with every take. You can really feel the fear on the screen. Behind the scenes, things were just as tense. Paul Hogan, who starred in and helped write the movie, was having a mental breakdown. In 1958, he got married to Noeline Edwards. They had 5 kids together, but by the time the movie was shot in 1985, their marriage was very weak. In 1981, they got a divorce and then got married again. Not long after, they were getting ready for a second, very public divorce. In the middle of all that, Hogan and Linda Kozlowski were fighting. On screen, they really did get along. In fact, it was so real that stories began to spread. There was a lot of hate in Australia for Kozlowski in the press. Later, Hogan said, "I'm not a great husband, I'm good early." It wasn't fake that he was feeling things during his act. He saw his life fall apart right then and there. There was a scene in the movie that almost didn't happen. At least not the way we remember it. People still talk about the scene where Mick Dundee says, "That's not a knife, that's a knife," but laughs almost killed it. It was impossible for Linda Kozlowski to keep a straight face. It was so dry and perfect the way Hogan said the line that she laughed out loud every time. It took 47 tries to get it right. 47. It is hard enough to film on a busy New York street, but this turned into a comic act. The group couldn't keep it together either, but that anger turned into magic in some way. People have talked about that scene a lot in the history of movies. And that laugh, which wasn't shown in the final cut, told a bigger story about how the 2 stars were connected. Not only did that link light up the screen, it also lit up the awards loop. Lena Kozlowski was nominated for a Golden Globe for Best Supporting Actress in 1987. It was her very first big movie. Diane Weist, Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio, and other big names in Hollywood were in the running with her. No one thought she would be in that group. She was still new, and most people didn't know who she was. But there she was, walking the red line and doing interviews, showing that new stars could hang with old ones. Hollywood loves stories like this one about Cinderella. This time though, it was an Australian movie that no one thought would become a big hit. But it did. Crocodile Dundee made a lot of money at the box office. With a budget of only $8.8 million, it made over $328 million around the world. It was the most popular movie in theaters in the US for 9 weeks in a row, and made $22 million, making it the second most successful movie of 1986. Top Gun was the only movie that made more money. That meant that Linda Kozlowski's first role made her one of the highest-grossing new actors of the whole decade. That's pretty good for someone who had been sleeping in mine huts only a few months before. The movie's success didn't just change her job. It put her on the map of pop culture history. All of a sudden, her face was everywhere. Her part in one of the most popular comedies of all time is still a high bar that not many newbies have ever been able to hit. When Crocodile Dundee came out in 1986, it made Paul Hogan famous all over the world. He was already famous in Australia. But something much more personal was going on behind the scenes. Hogan fell in love with his American co-star Linda Kozlowski while they were making the movie. Time could not have been worse. He was still married to Noeline Edwards, the woman he had been married to for a long time. It wasn't just any marriage. Hogan got married to Noeline in 1958, got a divorce in 1981, and then married her again in 1982. They had been together for more than 30 years, and had 5 kids before they broke up for good in 1989. People started to pay attention when Hogan filed for divorce a second time. No longer was it just a private breakup. Everyone started to watch Crocodile Dundee because it was so popular. A lot of people thought if Kozlowski was the reason why the marriage ended, even though she was almost 20 years younger than him, they seemed too good together on TV. Hogan and Kozlowski both said that the relationship began after his marriage was already in bad shape. But it was too easy to miss the connection. Fans were shocked. People thought Hogan was a great family man, but he was now divorcing his wife for a younger celeb. The story got a lot of attention in the news. The media in Australia called it the Outback Affair. It was all over the news in Los Angeles and Sydney. They were followed everywhere by paparazzi. Reporters kept track of where they stayed when they flew, and even camped outside their homes. Talk about them got louder the more they tried to keep it quiet. People called Hogan an enemy of the Australian ideal, and Kozlowski was seen as the personification of all the things people didn't like about Hollywood entertainment. People did more than just talk. Kozlowski began getting hate mail and even threats to kill him. Fans who were mad at her called her the home wrecker. She was blamed for ending a happy 23-year marriage and a family that everyone loved. Just a short time after becoming famous, she was hated by many people. She stopped going to public events and hired protection to keep herself safe. Noeline, Hogan's ex-wife, was seen as the hurt mother of 5 who was taking care of the kids by herself. A lot of people felt bad for her. Fury came after Kozlowski. It wasn't just a story anymore. It was now risky. These two people tried to hide everything for more than a year. They met in secret in hotel rooms and checked in under fake names. They got there and left at different times, and they even talked to each other using secret notes. Not many people knew what was going on. It was hard to live that way. It got too much with all the lies, the pressure and the lies. The truth came out in the end. Hogan's marriage was over by that time. The way people saw him had changed forever. Crocodile Dundee 2 wasn't just a hit when it came out in May 1988. It made a lot of money around the world. It only cost $14 million to make, but it made over $239 million around the world. Many people all over the world were excited to see Paul Hogan and Linda Kozlowski again on TV. She also got a big raise this time. From the first movie, her pay went up by 240%. For the second movie, she made $1.2 million. It looks like you won, but there was a catch. Paul Hogan still made more money. He was the star, but he also helped write the script. It was still hard to ignore the pay gap. The sequel broke all kinds of records. There it made $24.9 million, which is about $60 million now. The movie made $24.5 million in its first weekend in the US, which was Thanksgiving weekend. At that time, that was the funniest start ever. It even made enough money to be the 5th most successful movie of 1988. Linda was big all over the world now. But in Hollywood she wasn't treated equally, even though she was very successful. After the movie did well, a lot of ideas came in. But there was something wrong. They all looked the same. It was only possible for Linda to play girlfriends or pretty sidekicks. There are no stars or depth. It's just pretty girls next to a funny guy. She was asked to be in Ghost, Pretty Woman and Basic Instinct. All of them would become famous movies. Pretty Woman made more than $463 million. Many people know Sharon Stone from the movie Basic Instinct. Linda didn't want to be just another pretty face on screen with no real part to play, so she said no. People in the business were shocked. Who would turn down that kind of role? Linda had other ideas. She had trained for important roles. She wanted to be known for more than just how she looked. The next game was Pass the Ammo. There were plans for a dark comedy with Bill Paxton that would be different. Even though it cost $8 million and tried something new with televangelism, it didn't do well at all. It only made $169,000. More than $7.8 million was lost. The movie was over very quickly. It was taken out of cinemas almost right away. For Linda, it was a very bad thing. One moment she was on top of the world after a big hit. The next she was in one of the worst movies of the year. It wasn't good for the business world. Not the writing or the direction, but her. The parts got even smaller because of this. The truth was that Linda Kozlowski was more than just a pretty face on TV and movies. She learned how to dance at Juilliard. She had done shows on Broadway. She was very skilled and had a lot of experience. There was no care in Hollywood. The only thing they saw was Paul Hogan's partner. That wasn't just what she did in the movie. In real life she was called that. When they got married in 1990, it became even harder for her to break out of the mold. It felt like she was stuck in the past even when she came back to Los Angeles in 2001 for Crocodile Dundee. It didn't matter what else she did. It didn't matter what she learned. In the Australian entertainment, everyone only saw the American girl. She had enough by 1989. She told her agent she was ready to leave. She was sick of writing stories and being pushed to the side. She was sick of Hollywood acting like they didn't have anything else to give. Her last movie didn't do well at the box office. It hurt her to see other actors do well with parts she turned down, but she still felt like a supporting figure in her own career. It wasn't just annoying, it broke my heart. She was ready to give up fame and money to get out of the trap. It wasn't easy for Linda Kozlowski to become a mother. She had a hard time having a child for almost 8 years after she married Paul Hogan. It was a hard time. She was stuck, mentally worn out and unhappy at work. She was also afraid that she would never be able to have children. In 1998, she was already 40 years old when she finally gave birth to their son, Chance. She had almost given up on that moment, but it felt like a gift. In an interview after a few years, she talked about how hard those years were for her. She even said that her last 2 acting jobs were terrible because all she could think about was having a baby. She wanted it so badly that it took over her life. She and he both felt like they had a new life when Chance was born. She said she had finally found peace when she was 43 years old. Linda Kozlowski once said, "I've got a baby, I'm happy and I'm content." It was everything she had hoped for, but even joy couldn't fix everything. The birth of their son Chance only made it more obvious how different she and Paul Hogan truly were. Linda began to feel the need for independence, while Hogan preferred a quiet family-centered life. Though they both loved their son deeply, the emotional distance between them kept growing. Years later, headlines would shift to Chance, now in his mid-20s. Some reports described him as unkempt, raising concern from Hogan, who seemed visibly worried. It was a reminder that even after the cameras stop rolling, the struggles within a family can persist. Linda's acting career had also started to fade. After her breakout in Crocodile Dundee, things took a downward turn. In 1990, she starred opposite Hogan again in Almost an Angel, but the film flopped, and critics were harsh. Roger Ebert described her performance as wooden and uninspired, a review that deeply hurt. Once seen as a rising star, she was now losing her place in the spotlight. As time passed, her roles became smaller and less prestigious. In 1994, she appeared in 2 direct-to-video films, Backstreet Justice and The Neighbor, which she later admitted were low quality. She said the stress from those productions gave her an ulcer. She felt like the only person on set who cared about doing a good job, and that disconnection wore her down. Things at home weren't much easier. She and Hogan frequently moved between Los Angeles and Australia, partly due to Hogan's ongoing tax issues. For Linda, it meant a lack of stability and a constant sense of impermanence. In October 2013, after 23 years of marriage, she filed for divorce. Fans were shocked. They had met and fallen in love during the filming of Crocodile Dundee, and theirs was seen as one of Hollywood's rare enduring love stories. But behind the scenes, the relationship was unraveling. Linda cited irreconcilable differences. To outsiders, that term might sound vague, but for Linda and Paul, it spoke volumes. She was tired of waiting for him to let go of his old ways. He remained rooted in Australia while she longed for new experiences. The distance between them, both physical and emotional, became too great. When court documents surfaced, more cracks were revealed. Hogan smoked heavily, while Linda had embraced a healthier lifestyle. Their home reeked of cigarette smoke, which also flavored their arguments. His drinking reportedly increased and tensions flared. Their son Chance found himself caught in the middle. The home, once filled with laughter, had grown cold and quiet. When the divorce terms became public, they raised eyebrows. Linda received a lump sum of $6.25 million but waived her rights to spousal and child support. At the time, Chance was just 15. While most celebrity divorces are drawn out by financial disputes, Linda made a quick, clean break. Some said she was simply done. Others believed she was reclaiming her life after years of compromise. Either way, she walked away with finality. In interviews that followed, Linda spoke openly. There had been no scandal, no betrayal. Just 2 people who had grown apart. "We became more like roommates than husband and wife," she said. Their conversations had boiled down to grocery lists and school pickups. The romance that began on a movie set had faded, quietly and gradually. The divorce was finalized on July 23, 2014, exactly 24 years and 2 months after their wedding on May 23, 1990. The symmetry was haunting, but Linda's story didn't end there. Less than a year later, in 2015, she was wandering through the bustling markets of Marrakesh on what she thought was just a vacation. That's when she met Moulay Hafid Baba, a charismatic Moroccan tour guide. The connection was instant. They laughed, explored the city, and found a natural rhythm together. Linda, then 57, had just closed one chapter and found herself opening another. By 2017, they were married in a colorful Moroccan ceremony attended by over 200 guests. Linda embraced her new life fully. She converted to Islam, adopted the name Layla, and immersed herself in Moroccan culture, learning Arabic, cooking local dishes, and wearing traditional kaftans. She called the experience a rebirth. That same year, she and Baba launched a luxury travel business called Dream My Destiny, offering personalized Moroccan tours to American clients. Their packages included private rides, hot air balloon rides over the Atlas Mountains, and dinners with Berber families. The business flourished, serving over 500 clients and generating more than $2 million by 2020. Linda hosted many guests herself, and while her fame helped draw attention, it was her passion for her new life that truly captivated people. To seal her transformation, she sold her Venice Beach home in 2018 for $1.8 million and bought a riad in Marrakesh's historic Medina. She and Baba restored it room by room, filling it with antiques, art, and memories. Gone were the scripts and spotlights, replaced by lanterns, spices, and a calmer pace. Linda didn't just walk away from Hollywood, she walked towards something better. She now splits her time between Marrakesh and Los Angeles, still holding her American citizenship but finding her heart rooted in Morocco. Her days begin with the call to prayer echoing through the city, followed by peaceful runs through the Menara Garden and quiet breakfasts of mint tea and fresh bread. She spends her time curating travel experiences, shopping local markets, and discovering hidden gems that most tourists miss. With her husband Baba, she continues to run Dream My Destiny, helping travelers connect deeply with Moroccan culture. In the evenings she relaxes in hams or enjoys warm nights in cozy cafes. She lives between two worlds, and it all fits. Her old life hasn't disappeared, it has simply transformed. Paul Hogan, once her on-screen love interest and later her husband, remains a part of her story. They raised a son and shared decades of life together. Their divorce in 2014 was free of scandal and full of mutual respect. Paul even congratulated her on her new marriage and successful business. Linda has no regrets. She left acting not in anger but with clarity. After Crocodile Dundee in Los Angeles came out in 2001, the roles she was offered were increasingly unfulfilling. She described them as low-quality, straight-to-video projects that drained her spirit. Eventually she realized they weren't worth it. She walked away to raise her son and build a more meaningful life. Now she guides travelers, explores new cultures, and finds joy in simple things. Her journey isn't just about reinvention, it's about knowing when to let go. Linda Kozlowski didn't just leave fame behind, she found something better.